Her lips which whisper like reeds on the wind, wet with moisture, sprung from a well deep within. Whispers, like the petals of an iris, the reedy blossom which weathers and is not trodden down for long. Oh, we got line 1645. Moon's actually out. It's between those two lights somewhere. It's got heavy fog and mists out here in Lexington, Kentucky. Of arrows shot and arrows drawn, almost as if blessed by a fawn, their marks thus made, indeed they seldom missed. Of numbers up and numbers down, a smile where once had been a frown, what reservations held were thus dismissed. And ever the nebbish waif was jade, drawn as preparations were made, in the new cave with Claudia and Eve, and Loris of Drakmar, as well as Nigel with his nature spells, preparing for an onslaught to receive. And Morpheus and Jenna no perilous trips would not forego, as they polished up their blades and packed their bags. Cold you know it was below, and damp down where they were to go. They dressed and wrapped their arms and legs in rags. They set out from their newfound lair, descending down the cliff in pairs, 85 feet down to the cavern floor. Back down to where the zombies were, undead accounted, to be sure. Bodies burned to return they nevermore. With torches lit and burning bright, distant eyes reflecting light, for scurrying away in wanton affectation, feigning fear in quiet flight, scampering to get out of sight, to return in quiet expectation. But drooling in the dark they be, anticipating hungrily, they gazing on in quiet summation, waiting for their eyes to adjust, tempering a ravenous lust, titillating taste buds in flirtation. What blissful bane to feign disdain, a fortuitous feast for to abstain, what abject arbor for to harbor pain. What mandibles sprang into view, a killing blow, but all too true, frightfully fast, but parried all the same. A worm with many legs to see, bloated, maggot-like it be, as veered it from the light in rapid flight. Not rapidly enough it be, its innards all too soon to see, transfused upon the cavern floor as it writhed in summery spite. 'Twas upon there upon the floor but bested, from its life it was divested, never to be a problem evermore, ne'er to stalk the living again, or carrion sought for to rend, a threat dispatched further to be ignored. And south again into the cave of wealth and treasure for to crave, and mystery and fascination sought, which led them to a dead-end cave and empty purses for to save, near to fill the baggage they had brought. The cool, clear water of a sump into which Gangor left a dump, to leave no trace for predators to track. Into the sump ne'er to descend, where shat he at the cavern's end, anxiety his bowels for to rack. A stomach's twist and stomach's churn, anxiety but for to burn, for what awaits at the cavern's far end. What Gangor felt and Gangor knew, instincts within he knew were true, was fear indeed to be his travel friend. And off again they would resume, to caverns north I would presume. Barbarians will barbarians always be. Of scats to find I would decline, ne'er was to be and left behind, never happened, and nothing there to see. 1,000 paces north or more, a broken trek lacking our door, a passage to a chamber east had loomed. A passage to a chamber vast, half flooded, with no lines to cast, no lines to throw but corpses to exhume. For at the center of the cave skeletal corpses indeed lay, idly jumbled about 4 fathoms deep. Idly jumbled amidst decay 4 or more dead bodies lay, idly scattered possessions for to reap. Armor shed and for to swim, and cinched around the waist had been, a knotted rope to grope should trouble rise. For numbing cold clear waters make for souls the numbing cold to take, for wayward swimmers death for to excise. Into the cold clear waters now for to descend 4 fathoms down, for want or for but vain exploration. With rope and parcels to descend to pry from those had met their end, whatever found that they would need no more. What waters bound by magic be, the bottom not were they to see, as waters rose transposing near the shore. What elemental beast did rise, in serpent's form, a fell surprise, unseen by those below who swam unwary, who by their tethered ropes to yank, 'twas circled round their wayward flanks, were pulled to shore, nay corpses more to bury. With weapons drawn they thus withdrew, no beast to know or misconstrue, of treasure lost, indeed no expectation. What numbers drawn a telling lot, of danger thus to be forgot, an uncanny peril for to be left behind. Their numbers down a telling fate, their fortune ne'er to be ere late, a future fortune onward for to find. And north into the caverns dark, left behind they missed And north into the caverns dark, behind left where they missed their mark, the caverns width 100 paces o'er. A 60 beam it would thus seem, and half as high in height I deem, and wider to the north 10 score or more. Of paces viewed and paces tread, the latter likened more to dread, less dreadful though the smoother cavern floor. Flooded once apparently, smooth and dusty thus it be, smooth and dusty with marks which were ignored. It flat but with a slight decline, infernal not nor by design, a grade not steep but nay unapparent. It angling down but was the ground which wove around some stranger mounds, some mounds with holes on top which downward went. But down within the earth to know what secrets lurk but to forgo, those V-shaped marks ignored were but a clue to what did dwell within those holes, not rats or mice nor even moles, what lurked before, what lurked below, a meeting for to rue. Sorry, it's the garbage truck. I'll let them pass. Bit noisy, but they're doing good work. I know their boss. A meeting, yes, for to digress, what lurked below, but for to guess. What lurked below, a clicking sound they found, a clicking sound on an acrid smell. What neighbors fell indeed did dwell, what neighbors lurking deep there underground. A spell to cast, the tunnel closed, no aunts to be, a threat to pose. And onward to the north, a slight descent. The cavern narrowed to a pace, the ceiling sloped to narrow space, and to the west the curving passage went. It opened to a chamber low, a fathom high or maybe so, but wide 200 paces there or more. A floor of tiles in triangle shapes, a trap to ponder for escape, and holes of 3 at every vertex be. What holes of 3 a mystery, a pressure plate or trigger be, crazy Ivan, ever impatient he. Yeah, I'll stop right there and pick it up with line 1695. Yeah, back to the dead former main character, Fred Thompson, 2 S's. That character actually came out of, it was created back in 1987. Originally, I rolled it up in first edition D&D. And like I said, that was one of the proxies that, the convicted spy and traitor Robert Hansen would misrepresent himself as. And everybody knows, if people who knew Fred Dalton Thompson knew that he wasn't Hansen. And see, that the thing about that is, 20 plus years after he was busted and after he was, he died, he died like 6 months ago or so. But people still bought his big, Fred Dalton Thompson charade. So, but yeah, back to the character though. I created that back in '87. I was in a relationship with the original soccer mom, who was actually a computer programmer and a very gifted coder, who ended up being one of Robert Hansen's assets. He exploited a lot of people like this. She was actually one of the more up and up ones, who wasn't like a stripper who was laundering money for him. But, that's where the Fred Thompson character came from. It was actually a fighter magic user thief, a halfling character. But, in order for the copyright to hold up, I had to turn it into a literary domain. So I had to dump all the D&D stuff. And like I said, the whole D&D connection was appropriate because that's one of the things that Hansen and the right-wingers, and all the satanic panic, doom and gloom people were dead set against, So it's kind of like... playing him from within via something that he hated. So there's a lot of issues there too. It's like the lawsuits with, FASA, which was formerly based in Chicago. A lot of that's just Hansen. I mean, him and the GRU playing legal games, like trying to undermine the whole industry, like fantasy role-playing gaming and stuff, fantasy and sci-fi and stuff like that. Now, the Shattered Realm of the Ice Queen, that was actually, one of Hansen's other assets. Her daughter had gifted me with a yellow legal pad back in 1993, and that was one of the first things that I wrote. So that's like where that comes from, the temporal realm, this great big water clock, in the realm of Ramadoa in the mountains, where, well, basically time stops. I mean, it's kind of like, I can't remember if I was reading Stephen Hawking's book then or not, but, it was like, it was kind of like a fantasy extrapolation on, the whole notion of, time and space within a singularity, So, and it's like, well, it comes down to the retroactive nature of United States federal law. It's got a finite beginning, but, when you create federal legislation, it's retroactive. So it applies across the board back to the origin of the country. So, and it's kind of like, that's the sort of means of thinking that it was based upon. But so that's 93. And then a lot of the plot line, it's a lot of it went down. It was based on some role-playing gaming sessions that I had with, there was another one of Hansen's assets who was party to an indictment up there in Cleveland, which was federal. I mean, it was a FBI case and stuff like that. Like I said, it was not exactly spoon-fed because the FBI really had to do their work because they actually set one of the people up to fall, and it turned out that she wasn't the person who ended up going to prison. But it was still a spoon-fed case, and it comes down to, ghost corporations and holding corporations and models for all sorts of nefarious, untidy, and, nasty stuff that, goes down. It's like I said, it goes back to the old school hotspot, being a place where unfriendly intel coincides with criminal activity. So a lot of that, the basic storyline was pretty much hashed out in 1995. And I did use like a Shakespearean model for that because it's believed by some that Shakespeare actually had his daughters role play out his plays as he wrote them, to like help him write, which is really cool. I mean, like I said, I got to explore that notion too, which was really neat. But I better stop here. I'm going on 13 minutes. Thank you for listening.